definitely, by now should be on the other side. We shouldn't be waiting no more. It's time to win now. Our time is now, for sure. I don't want to be talking about it, too much or anything like that. But we're gonna get it done this year.
Welcome back, everybody, and claws up and bear down. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate every one of you. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Everyone, please hit the like button. I appreciate you being here. I want to talk today about a constant message we keep hearing through minicamp, through OTAs, as they get into press conferences. It's press conference season. We're eating everything. We're looking into everything. We're dissecting everything. We want to know everything about this team and see how they're going to do. Is things going to be different? Are they going to be different from the past? Is this going to be a Mitch Trubisky situation? Is this going to be a Justin Fields situation? Or is Caleb Williams truly special? One thing we know for sure, Ryan Poles has built this team differently. Caleb Williams is coming into a situation with not only a rookie in Rome Odunze, which we never do. We never draft a rookie wide receiver this high in the draft. But he's also got DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, on and 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 on. He's got so many weapons at his disposal, it's almost going to be impossible for him to fail. But what's the constant message at camp already? They're not taking it easy. They're not sitting back on their laurels. They are pushing him. We have a top 5 defense. That's something they keep pressing. We have a top 5 defense. Why is that important? Well, as we know in football, you've got to win more score points, and you've got to limit less points. And that point differential helps teams win the game. That's how you win the game. So they're taking this on, taking a top 5 defense. They're pushing Caleb right off the bat. They're getting him pressured. They're getting him into the system. And how is it going to turn out? Well, the constant theme you hear about is the playoffs this year, contender this year. And some people, some analysts are already projecting that the Bears could make it to the Super Bowl this year. Year one of a rookie quarterback making it to the Super Bowl. Is it crazy? Is it out there? Maybe a little bit. Maybe we're a little too high on this train. Maybe we're too excited, but it's not just us. It's national pundits too. They're saying the same thing. And the other thing you hear in Hallis Hall, they're talking about 10 wins. Why do they keep saying 10 wins? Why do they keep saying playoffs? Well, we know from history that 10 wins is kind of a magical number of where you get to the playoffs. It's kind of where you lock it in. In fact, over the last decade, only 2 teams that have won 10 games have missed the playoffs. 98% of the time, a team with 10 wins makes it to the playoffs. The only 2 teams that didn't, Miami Dolphins in 2020, they were 10-6, and the New York Jets in 2015 were also 10-6. Both victims of lesser teams in weak divisions making it to the playoffs with subpar records. To me, what's a bigger indicator of what determines a team's fate is how they play the games, how the point differential is. Now, I know it sounds silly, I know it sounds simple, but you put more points on the board, you limit the other team to less points on the board, and you win the games. It's that silly, it's that simple. This is this last season. This is the point differentials. But one thing I'm going to point out in here is those teams that just skim by usually aren't the ones making it to the Super Bowl. Now, just because you have a higher point differential doesn't mean you're going to make the playoffs. It comes down to how you play the games, the opponents you have, how those games turn out. Obviously, 10 wins is the motive. But every team that makes the Super Bowl in the last decade has a plus 100 or more point differential. I put run, but point differential. The only ones that didn't were last year's Chiefs, who had mid-season struggles, plus 77. 2021 Rams, 2021 Bengals, who met in the Super Bowl, both high point differentials though, and the 2015 Broncos at plus 59. There are rare occasions where teams miss. I mean, every year it happens actually, where big points are put up on the board, but they missed the playoffs. Last year, the Saints, really, really good team that's overlooked this year, and a lot of people put down on them because they're from the NFC South, but they had 75-point differential. 2022, the Jaguars had plus 54. 2019, the Cowboys had plus 113. You could look at the bottom left there. And then every year, there's a team that has the bad point differential. They have negative point differential, and they make the playoffs somehow. This last year, the Steelers had a negative 20-point differential. The Buccaneers the year before, the Vikings only had a -3, but I'm pointing them out because that's the year the Vikings went 13-4. But then what happened to them when they got to the postseason? They faced the Giants in the wild card round and lost in the first round of the wild card. So what does it really come down to? It comes down to how you play the games and you stacking up the wins. You're getting the 10+ wins. So I'm going to point out here, I pointed this out on a different video, but there's little white things underneath them. You see 29 the Bears, 11 Lions, 18 Vikings, 4 Packers. So I'm going to point this out, and I'm going to go over our division and how difficult it's going to be for the Bears to make it to the playoffs. So 29 is a good number. It's high. You want a worse uncommon opponent or opponent's schedule. So the Bears this year have tied for the 3rd easiest schedule. So their opponents in 2023 had a .467 winning percentage. The Lions, on the other hand, had a .509. So their opponents in 2024 had a record in 2023 of over 50% wins. The Vikings, .502, same thing. The Packers, the 4th hardest schedule this year, .526. So if you look at the Bears, they have 3 of the easiest uncommon opponents. So in each division, the Bears and the Packers and the Vikings and the Lions are going to play each other 2 games. So out of all the games the Bears are going to play, 6 are going to come against the division. Then we're going to face common opponents from the NFC West and the AFC South. So each team in our division will play those 8 teams the same. We'll all play the same opponents for those 8. So that makes up the 14. So out of the remaining 3 games to make 17 games, these are our uncommon opponents. The Bears face the Panthers, who had the worst record in the league last year, the Commanders, who had the 2nd worst record in the league last year, and the Patriots, who had the 3rd worst record in the league last year. It couldn't get any better for the Bears for the draw of uncommon opponents. On the other hand, the Packers are facing the Eagles, the Saints, and the Dolphins, who all had good records last year. So really what it's going to come down to is how these divisional teams face off against each other in the division. And as we've pointed out, the Bears have a gauntlet against our own division, starting on Week 11 with the Packers, then Week 12 with the Vikings, Week 13 with the Lions, where we play all 3 of those games within 11 days, and then have a little break, go to the Niners in San Francisco, come back, and then play 3 games in 10 days against 2 of those opponents, and then the Seattle Seahawks, and then we end it with the Packers. So you guys have seen me put this up. This is our opponents. This is where we stand, but I want to take it a little bit farther. And I've said all the divisional games are 50-50 games. I want to take it a little farther because we have 10.5 here. I want to show what Vegas is showing. And I didn't want to make this video too long, so I put it all on one place. So ignore the stuff on the right and the left and just look right down the middle at odds. And I'm going to do this for every team in our division this year and show how the Bears really stick out, that if we really did put together a top 5 defense and Caleb Williams is as advertised, and we have a top 5 defense and a top 10 offense, that this team could really, really be special. So you look at this and the odds for each individual game by Vegas. Now I understand Vegas has the line set at us at 8.5 wins. But on the left there, look, 10-7 and -7.5 point differential. Vegas has individual games, us winning 10 games, even though they've only set the line at 8.5. So they're already saying the Bears are going to be a 10-win team. If you look back at what I said, this is how I see the season laying out before 10.5 wins. That really falls right in line with what Vegas is saying for individual games. Now on the right is my predictions. Now this is way too early, but this is really how I see things shaking out. And guys, yes, I do have us sweeping the Packers. I think a lot of fans are overlooking that Detroit is really the tough team in this division. It is not the Packers. I understand we haven't beaten the Packers for 5 years. We haven't beaten them for 10 straight games. Blah, 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 yuck, yuck, yuck. There's a lot of things if you want to look at the Packers. Some recent videos I've done. Jordan Love is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and the team got luckier on breaks that were not their responsibility more than any other team last year. I see the Packers as an underachieving team this year with a mediocre roster and a great coach. So here's where I see the Bears. I see that first game, Vegas agrees, -4.5. That's a big spread for a Vegas spread. I don't know if you guys realize that, but that's a big spread. So I see us winning that one. With Caleb being young, I'd like us to win every single game, but we're going to Houston. CJ Stroud is really rolling with some moxie right now. He's a very intelligent quarterback, and they've got a stacked roster. I see that being the first loss on our schedule. Then we go to Indy, who was overlooked by a lot of pundits still this year. I don't want to do too many deep dives into everything, but a lot of people don't realize if one play at the end of last year, Indy would have been going to the playoffs instead of Houston. If they wouldn't have pulled out Jonathan Taylor, who knows why they did that on that last play of the game, and they dropped the ball. If they would have made that, they'd be in the playoffs, and Houston wouldn't have been in the playoffs, and this whole narrative that goes around would be different. But that's the breaks. That's how the NFL works. We move forward. We're not favored to win that game against Indy. I think we can beat them, but it's going to be a tough game. So I see that being a win or a loss. But I'm going to say for 2 games in a row, the Rams are a very tough team as well. We're favored to win that one. So I'm going to say we're going to win one of those 2 games. I'm not going to pick which one right now. If you had to make me choose, I'd say we probably beat the Rams and lose to Indy. But we'll start off going 2-2. But then we face Carolina, Jacksonville, at Washington, at Arizona, versus New England. We're going to be on a roll. Then we face Green Bay at home on Caleb's birthday. Well, the day before his birthday. My birthday, but the day before Caleb's birthday. I see us winning that game. Same with Minnesota. Detroit is a buzzsaw this year. San Francisco is tough. We're not going to win every single game, but realistically, if you look down this list, what we could do, I already said 10.5 is what I think we'll win. But realistically, on the right, we could win 13 games on this schedule. We could win 13 games. I mean, that's very, very doable. Well, let's look at the rest of the division. And no, I'm not saying my official prediction is 13-4, but realistically, I mean, that could happen. If this team gets on a roll and they do things the right way, it could happen. I'm still sticking with my 10.5, and I really say 11 wins, because you always lose some games you don't think you'll lose, and you win some games you don't think you'll win. But really, that's the way our schedule stacks up. Let's look at the rest of the division. Right off the bat, here's the Lions. And they've got a gauntlet, but they're a much tougher team. So you can see how I laid theirs out, kind of how I laid the Bears out. And I see them as an 11-win team. That's kind of right where I see them. And those, like I said, those divisional games, those are your 50-50 games. Well, how does that stack out? Well, if you look right down the middle again, here's Vegas's individual game odds. And Vegas has them predicted as a 13-4 team if you take solely the individual game by game. So Vegas has them as a 13-4 team, and I don't differ too much from that. I really see them being close to that. I have them around a 12-win team. Now, I realize it's easy for Bears fans to kind of rag on the Lions, and Don Berg gets really annoying in the chats. But the reality is, the Lions are pretty stacked, and they only improved themselves this offseason, unlike the Packers, who I can't understand their drafts. The Lions, the signing of DJ Reader alone is a massive upgrade for that team. I think they're stacked in the trenches on both offense and defense. The toughest offensive and defensive line in our division from A to Z, toughest hands down. On top of that, I think they had a good draft as well. So the Lions, they've proven themselves to be the king of the North now, and we have to dethrone them. That's up to us. I don't know if that's necessarily the objective this year. The objective this year is to win 10 games and make it to the playoffs. Then from the playoffs, see where it goes and roll into the Super Bowl. But the Lions are tough. Don't let your bias or your thoughts on how we did against them last year make you think otherwise. But that's the thing with divisional games. In a divisional game, anybody can win on any given week. All right, so let's look at the Vikings. Where do the Vikings stand? And they're in more of a rebuild mode, in my opinion. They're in more of a tough situation. So I've got them as a 5-ish win team. You know what? Vegas doesn't differ too much from that. If you look at the individual game by individual game, it's actually kind of sad. The Vikings right now, because of their tough schedule and because of where they are in the rebuild, they're projected to be a 3.5 win team if you take the individual game basis by Vegas. Now, if you look at the right, I've got to win in roughly 4. So that's kind of where I see them at. But these teams, you know, they go on to a scary game or two and they pull off some upsets. Just hopefully the Bears come prepared and it's not one of those games the Bears end up being the upset victim of. But the Vikings aren't too much of a threat this year with their tough schedule and with where they are in their roster and their team rebuild. Now, here's the one where I differ from the national media. This is the Packers, and this is their schedule, and it is tough. If you look at their home games, they've got their divisional games up top, Then they've got the Cardinals and the Saints. That should be wins. But just as I pointed out, the Saints had a huge positive point differential last year and still didn't make the playoffs because of one game at the end of the year. They lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If they would have won that, they would have been a 10-win team. But they have the Dolphins at home, the Texans at home, the Colts at home, the Niners at home. They have a tough schedule. Then away, they have to go to these teams to play. The Bears, Lions, Vikings. That's fine. But then you've got the Jaguars away. You've got the Rams away. You've got the Eagles away. You've got the Seahawks and the Titans away. I see them as a 6.5 win team this year. Well, where does Vegas have them? Vegas is crazy high on Green Bay, and I can't figure it out for the life of me. Poor quarterback play, and they scampered into the playoffs, barely making it into the playoffs at 9-8, and they're projected to be this juggernaut? Nah. Look at their schedule. They've got Philadelphia. They've got Indy. To me, those are 2 losses back-to-back to start the season. Tennessee, yep, Minnesota, I can see them winning that. But going to Los Angeles on the road, I can't see them winning that game. Arizona, they should beat. But then they've got Houston. How are they favored against Houston? Jacksonville in Jacksonville. Can't see that one. The Lions, there's no chance Green Bay has a shot against the Lions this year. It's not happening. Then us, San Francisco, Miami, Detroit. It's a gauntlet for Green Bay. They're gonna be struggling. I don't have anything else to say about Green Bay except I don't see 12.5. I've got them right around 6-11. So look back at the Bears. You guys tell me what you think. Put your thoughts in the comment. Is this realistic? Are we an 11-13 win team? And more importantly, can we get a plus 100 run or point differential? Because it's not just about making it to the playoffs. We want to be going deep into the playoffs. And 16 of the last 20 teams to make it to the Super Bowl have had a 100 or more differential in point spread. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it. Let me know if you think this team really can be a 10-11 win team, because really that's where it starts. That's the basis of what we're pushing for. Yes, we want to take the North, but the talk has been about winning 10 games, making it to the playoffs, being a top defense, and that's where this all roots and stems from. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and until next time, thanks for tuning in, and bear down.